Are you going to make some introduction first?
Yes, yes. Basic, sir. Basic introduction. Yes.
Sure.
Hello. Good afternoon, sir. I am Anik. I'll be your moderator for today's live session of this e-talk for eSummit 2020. So let me present you to our audience. So he is Sir Nikhil Joshi. He is the CEO of SNic Solutions, and it's great to talk to you as a stalwart like you in the industry. Sir, could you tell us about your entrepreneurial journey down the line?
Sure, Anik. Thank you, as well as EDC at NIT Durgapur for having me for eTalks 2020. Uh, I know that you guys are in the Ruhr city, which is itself basically an example of entrepreneurship. The city being an industrial town, so you guys are in the right place actually for entrepreneurship, and I congratulate all of you for that. Uh, what I want to do here, Anik, and to the entire audience, is that I want to set up a premise before I share my story, and maybe also draw a purpose of what I expect in terms of this particular talk from my side being successful, to all of you. So let's set that up, and then I'll be happy to share my story here. Uh, as you can see my screen, uh, the premise is that if you see the entrepreneurship uh, industry, or everybody who's been talking about startups, companies, business, uh, I hear that there is a lot of talk, about funded startups. How do you get your startups funded? And when I was seeing some of the sessions earlier yesterday from other entrepreneurs, I think some of the things that were covered were very nice. Either it is about funding, either about it's the next big idea, some of the processes that you need to go about starting your business. I would like to set some of these points that you see on your screen as a premise to my story, and that is that funded startups are solving a very big need of the market. Every startup idea is not going to be building a unicorn company or even a sustainable business. Sustainable business can even be small, specialized, and bootstrapped. And if you don't have a game-changing business idea, start small. But most importantly, most businesses fail due to poor financial management. This, in summary, is basically the premise of my story here, and the background with which I come, and where SNIC Solutions is at. And our purpose here is that if I can inspire all you students at NIT Durgapur and everywhere else, whoever is watching, whether you're a student, whether you're thinking of starting a business, whether you already started, failed, and rethinking, whatever it is, if I can inspire you to start a bootstrapped small business, even if you do not have a very, very big idea, this is one of the key takeaways where I would think that I would have served the purpose of this talk from my side. The second thing I'd I'd really like here is that if I could share the competencies that you need to build while you're starting to take the road of entrepreneurship. That's another takeaway. And lastly, if I can learn something today from all of you when you ask me questions, I think that's going to be something as a learning for me. So let's go ahead and let me give a quick background about where I come from and who am I. I grew up in multiple places, starting from Morbi to Baroda to staying in the Gulf, doing my schooling there, and finally, for the last 20 years, I have been in Bangalore. And I have my background and bachelor's in industrial engineering and management from Ramaya Institute of Technology in Bangalore. As I worked and started the business on the course, I did some executive education, but my core subject matter expertise is, apart from running the business, is very technical too, which is in the area of industrial engineering, manufacturing operations management, and supply chain planning. I think many of the industrial engineers, mechanical engineers, even today, instrumentation, or anybody who's part of automation, computer science engineers would understand these areas and fields very well. So let me give a background about the company, and I'd like to give that in terms of a success timeline. And what I'd like to do here is that I'll share with you how I started SNIC Solutions as a success timeline from 2006 to where we are today. But also, I'd like to share a failure timeline subsequently. So we are in our final semester of engineering. I had given an interview, and I had a classmate of mine. He had already got a job, and when I went for the interview, the position was for sales, and they were asking me technical questions. And in the second round, I went fully prepared for the technical questions, and then they were asking me sales questions. So somehow I didn't like what I felt. And also during the final year in engineering, when we do our projects, I felt that there was a gap in the industry. And as a result, my friend and we said, hey, why don't we just become self-employed and go and start a company rather than, going and taking up a job. He was excited, I was excited, and much of our final semester was doing our project work, but also thinking about what are we going to do when we start SNIC Solutions. And because our background was in industrial engineering, our professors, our teachers, they say, hey, you should start something in the same area. And we ventured out with an idea to provide industrial engineering services. That means whatever we had learned, we're just going to provide that as services. And just one day after we finished our final project Viva, we were in business. SNIC Solutions was born. To tell you a little bit about the first 6 months, we realized that we did not know industrial engineering the way the market knew, or we did not know engineering itself the way the industry perceived engineering to be. So this was a big lesson that we learned in the first 6 months itself. Long story short, the first 2 years until 2008, we were just taking whatever came our way because we had started the company Bootstrapped. My father gave me some money, and my friend's father gave him some money, and we just started with like very limited capital. And my father also told my mother at the background that he's probably going to quit in the next 3 years, but let him do what he wants to do right now. I was just 22. The same thing was for my friend. The first 2 years went where we got some projects, we did some work, etc. But we both were not earning a penny. Whatever came just went into making the business survive. One fine day, a call came for my partner from his family. He said, "Hey, better send money home, otherwise, just get onto a job." And long story short, he said, "Hey, Nikhil, if you want to continue, go ahead and do that. But I need to get onto a job." So I said, I will try it for another 1 year. If it is successful, it's okay. Or if it is not, even I'll also get onto a job. And that year, I was reading a book, and somewhere I read that, look, you really need to give your heart, blood, soul. Like, you can't have a chance to tell yourself that, hey, I did not try. And that year, I said, I'm at least going to tell myself that, I did my best, even if I fail. Um, and luckily, things started working in 2009. And in 2010, I could personally tell that, hey, we have become a business. There is some income coming in. And I was able to manage some of the expenses, etc. And if you see, since I started the business bootstrapped, my funding has come from my father, a very small amount of money. Uh, and he had told me when I started in 2006 that I'll support you for 3 years. You don't need to worry about the home for 3 years, but you need to manage your company. I'm not going to give you any more money, etc. In 2010, he dropped another bomb. He said, well, you said you're doing well. Now you need to even take care of the house. And I'm not going to basically support any household activities. And this was at the time when SNIC Solutions and my business had just become a business. Long story short, we took that as a challenge. And I also had a new member in 2010 who came into my life. So I got married end of 2009. And around 2010, I told my wife that come on board and join into the business. And I'll tell you why in the next slide. Going further, as we basically were building the business, our company, SNIC Solutions, we have primarily been doing industrial engineering services, but we realized that not many people knew how to implement industrial engineering related softwares in manufacturing companies, etc. So that's the area, the specialized area we built our expertise on. Uh, in 2010, I also, from 2006 to 2010, most of my work was hands-on because I was 22. I didn't know how work was to be done, so I said better do it myself. But from 2010 to 2014, I said, hey, I understand now how everything, how projects are done, how services are provided. And I said, let's go and hire a few employees. And if you see, in 2014, we got our first milestone. And this was my personal milestone. When I started the company, I said, one day we will be a 1 crore company. And in 2014, almost uh, after about 8 years, we reached there where we did a revenue of 1 CR. But what was different about us as a small business is that we had not taken money from anybody. We were a debt-free company, and we had complete ownership and complete control. So although the revenue may seem very small today, but at that time, um, the additional perks of being bootstrapped and being debt free were very advantageous for us as a company. It helped us a lot as we went forward. In 2015, we said, hey, we are getting projects from outside. There's a good market in North America. Let's go multinational. And we set up our first office in the United States. And in 2018, finally, we reached another milestone that we had set for ourselves. Is from 1 crore revenue, we said we want to now become a $1 million company. And we again reached that milestone in 2018. But as you again see, it was bootstrapped, debt free, and maintaining complete ownership. And that's our success journey so far, where in 2020 came the time of scale, growth, and COVID-19. So As we go through the year, we were already rethinking our business models since last year, but everything just has fallen in place where we have been able to change gears from just being a services company or a system integration company to changing gears to becoming a product company. And this is where our success timeline stands. But all this looks great, sounds great. Let me share with you a failure timeline of this entire story, of some of the learnings of and some of the mistakes that I personally and we as a company we did as we went into this journey. So in 2006, when I started the company, after my first meeting, I started calling and say who I can meet, and made a nice brochure. Literally, that was a copy of my engineering curriculum and all the subjects that were there. And I went into a company. And when I went, the person made me wait for I think about an hour. And after that, he called me in, and he heard me basically for 5 minutes. And he said, "How old are you, my son?" And I said, "I'm 22." He said, "Okay." He said, "Come back in a few years, and then we will talk." And as I was walking out of the cabin, and the next few days, I really introspected and found that the problem with us was capability. We neither understood what the market needed. Uh, it had just been a week since my final project Viva had got over, and we had just jumped into the well. But that was a good early sign for us to say, hey, we really need to figure out what really the market needs here. And as we started going along, if I had to sum up everything, one of the biggest lessons that we learned is that we have to build capability. And our failure in those initial 4 to 6 months was we assumed when we started the business that we already have the capability to do it. And this is what many business plans, many ideas that when you think about as students, etc., you think that nobody else is thinking this and nobody else is doing this. But when you really go into the market, you realize that no, there are a lot many people. You just didn't do enough research before starting, and it was more an emotional flow, and that was our case. But that failure, that small failure, uh, made me do a lot of things. I personally went and thought to myself that maybe I'm looking too young. So everywhere I used to wear a coat, a tie. I even grew a French beard in order to think that I look old, because I didn't like what that person said when he said that, hey, how old are you, my son? It hit me, and it hit my ego too, in a good way. But all in all, it taught us that, hey, for the next couple of years, fine, you jumped into the well. You need to basically build capability. So I learned personally to build capability on the engineering side. I went back to my books, studied it in a very different way than I studied it in college. Didn't sleep many nights. I should have done that in engineering, but there's another story to it. But in any ways, I got that done. Um, I learned a lot of sales, like how do you sell. And I find this as a very one of the biggest weak points basically in most engineering students coming out. They know technically very well, but they're just not able to sell themselves. And I learned a lot about people. I mean, what they tell you on the face, what they're actually thinking, just the nature and personality of people. I thought the whole world was great and nobody was a bad person. But I built some people skills and capabilities in that area as we went from 2006 to 2010.
Sir,
So,
uh,
yeah.
Sir, I would like to ask you a question. In this journey, like how the knowledge of industrial engineering has helped you throughout?
Yeah, so the SNIC Solutions was built to take the subject of industrial engineering to companies. And if you see the subject of industrial engineering, it's more like I would say, like a technical MBA in undergraduation, because industrial engineering is all about making things better, faster, cheaper. And when we went into any organization, it's our mindset to look for opportunities and identify, hey, where things can be improved, what can be done. But our focus basically within the industrial engineering is a vast. You can apply industrial engineering to banking, to ports, to manufacturing, to services, to distribution, even into your mother's kitchen. But we chose one or two particular industries and said that we will only focus in those areas. And we have our science of engineering, or our science of industrial engineering, has been primarily focused in the area of improving operations and improving supply chain. I hope, Anik, that's answering your question. Anik?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Like another question I wanted to ask, like
Yeah.
what made you leave? Another question I wanted to ask, sir. What
Yeah,
made you leave the job? And hello, could you listen to me? Hello,
I
am I
can.
audible? Huh. Like what made you leave your job and step into this uncertain world of startups?
I've not left the job. I had given a job interview while I was in my final year of engineering. I started this company right after engineering. Zero experience of a job or working in a company, nothing.
Like then why did you step up in this uncertain world of startups?
So uh,
What is the
the
motivation behind it? Yes, sir. That's the thing.
the motivation was only that we wanted to do something different. At that time, that was the only motivation. The other motivation was my friend. He said, "Hey, we should do something together," and I just felt it was a better thing to do at that point of time, rather than by nature. I've always been like if everybody is going basically east, I'm not just by personality comfortable going east, and I'd like to say, hey, maybe I'll go west. So those were basically the underlying motivations, behind starting something up at that time. When you're 22, you don't really have a fixed vision, a goal, etc., to say, hey, this is why I'm starting. And also we had a case where we were almost ready to uh, close the I remember telling my partner then that, hey, you know what, we'll start this business for 2 years, and if it doesn't go well, it might just look better on our profile, to get into an MBA college, or uh, to get into a university or something. I mean, this is how we think at 21, 22, and that's how it was back then. Nothing specific, Anik.
There is one question from one of our viewers from
Sure.
Facebook Live that
Yeah.
she Shukanya Datta. She asks, "How did you manage to run your company debt free for so many years?"
All right. So I have when I continue on the timeline here, I'll be able to speak a little on that. So let's go back to 2010. Late 2009, I got married at a very early age, which is very common in our communities. I come from the Gujarati community, and my father said, "Hey, it's time you have set up your business. Just get married." And my wife is the exact opposite of me. And in 2010, we had another failure. There was this one day where we just didn't have salaries to pay for the next month, and I could not sleep the whole night. And therefore, that's for the first time I shared, sat down with my wife, and she comes basically from a background where she had a good amount of financial experience. And we really learned in that year what is the importance of financial management. I also came across a book called Financial Intelligence for Entrepreneurs from I think somebody it's somebody related to Harvard, and it was a book basically for people who just don't understand finance, who don't come from the background. Mine was that a case, but I learned the importance of bookkeeping. My wife is, I'm a lazy person, but my wife Shraddha Joshi, she is a hardcore disciplined melancholic person, and she taught me the discipline of the bills, making sure that you can't say that you will pay salaries on the 5th or the 6th. There has to be a particular date. You need to plan for it. And the book taught me basically financial intelligence, and this is the underlying foundation basically of running a debt-free company. Anik, to answer the viewer's question, is that most businesses fail because of bad or poor financial management. And another aspect of running a debt-free company is it's a simple thing, right? Profit is equal to selling price minus cost price. So if you understand what are your costs, and if you can always get revenue more than that you spend, you are going to remain a debt-free company, for as long as you want. And we are a very small example. There are ample examples. If you look at family-owned businesses, whether in India or globally, most of them basically have been bootstrapped and debt-free for many years. So going forward, uh, and Anik, feel free to stop me if there are any questions. In
S-
2014, as we went ahead and said that okay, now we have a couple of employees. We had a case where I had a very big problem letting things go, because I was hands on doing everything right from we have swept the office, to writing checks to doing the most complicated math problem solving. But in 2014, we realized that we can't do everything. So learning to let go what you've already done for 8 years was hard. Trusting other people with your work was another thing that we learned on the way, and putting a process, putting system, and it's not only about just putting process, but then monitoring and governing whether that process is being adhered to. These were some of the lessons that we learned in 2014, and these three very poorly before 2014. And it was not even required because most of it was, uh, a lot of things, you were hands on. And that's where we learned. Anik, I remember you trying to talk there. Is there another question there?
Hello, sir. Yes, sir. There is another question from one of our viewers, Shriram Datta. He asks, how do you think the pandemic will affect the startups and how to keep yourself motivated in these unprecedented circumstances? Do you find any similarities between the 2008 crisis and the current situation?
The major difference between the 2008 crisis was that in 2008, when the crisis came, the effect was not like you could move around, you could still do your things, etc. The underlying business models basically were not affected, and the recovery was uh, fast in a way where people started asking for more. Like, in the past, if they needed only 5 items, now at least businesses started, I don't want five, I need 8 or 10, because there was just sheer demand for it. The current crisis, and our personal experience is that you have a lot of new constraints that have come in. You can't really travel, you can't really show your face to someone if you want to. Like, I have got business basically in 2006 from a lot of customers. They said, hey, I admire your passion, I think you're trying to do something here, let me give you a chance. That's going to be very difficult, right, in 2020, when you're sitting online and just trying to do a video call. So there are challenges, but the opportunity side in terms of getting motivated is that time and again, if you look at history, uh, uh, when bad things happen, they also go away, and when good things happen, they also have a cycle and they go away. So it's a cycle. So if right now we are having a challenge, this is the right opportunity to rethink and improvise, self introspect, and do things differently. And the time is allowing you, or the market is allowing you to do that. You're not going to get this opportunity once you get into the routines. And this is how we keep ourselves motivated at this moment of time. In fact, internally right now, in SNIC, we are seeing that everybody is actually so damn busy doing things that they always wanted to do but never found the time. And it's actually helping us uh, prepare for the next change of gears that we are trying to do here. All right.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir.
Yeah.
Sir, another question is there from one of our viewers, Abha Jha. She asks, what are the common mistakes that students make while getting started in the entrepreneurial field?
So uh, let's uh, let's treat this basically as a if you're doing a small business, right? The biggest mistakes people make is that their focus is too much on the product they're making. Let's say if you're making an app, if you're making a software today, or the focus is a lot, but it's the underlying foundations of business is not only about your idea and the idea's execution. It's also about how are you going to run this. So learning basically financial management, or learning people skills, learning how to talk, learning how to sell, learning how to market, all these aspects, you will have to look at it holistically. You can't just look at it from one lens. And this is a common mistake I see, that whenever I talk to uh, people who started companies, or people who are still in college thinking of starting companies, they are able to answer everything about their product very well. But if you tell, okay, how do you do your sales, or how would you run your finances, etc., there is very less understanding or even focus on that. And I can share that in 2015, one of the things we learned basically as a lesson, Abha, was we were not very big fans of doing everything on paper. We trusted people and we said, hey, I told you, right, just get it done. But we realized that whether it is customers, whether it is suppliers, etc., you can be taken advantage of if things are not in black and white. So learning to put things in black and white is what I would say, that the faster you do. Think of, if you're making a product, you just didn't think of putting a patent if it is so unique at the start of starting the business. And if you didn't do that, you say, let's see, once it is successful, then we will see it. That's just like, you're trusting the whole society that nobody's going to steal your idea, and everything will just be fine. The other thing is that when you're starting a business, you have to think basically like an owner. uh, so you have to do things yourself. You need to be prepared to uh, clean your office yourself if it comes to that, as well as do the most complicated stuff. But as you grow the business, in 2015 for us, the challenge was that we have to stop thinking like an owner, and I had to get into the shoes of thinking like a CEO, as to how do you run the organization, what is the organization, how do you grow and have scale, how do you put process. And that was a challenge that we had in 2015. Anik, I hope that answers Ava's question.
Thank you, sir. There is another question that
Sure.
Aniket asks, what are your views regarding growth of automation in India and in present situation?
It's, I mean, how computers grew in the 70s, right? Like computer became just a part of our lives from the 70s. It started off in the US, but for we the Indian kids, it's more like 90s or the 2000 decade, where mobiles, etc., it's just become a part of our life. automation is just the same thing. And a simple example to give you is just take your alarm clock. Every day in the night when I used to go to sleep, earlier we had the alarm clock. Every day I had to keep the alarm. But today in my mobile, I can say I need to get up at 6 o'clock on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. On Friday, I can get up at 8 o'clock. And Saturday, Sunday, just don't make me before 10 o'clock. It's a simple automation that has been given, and we don't even think of this these days. Uh, so that's the power of automation. So there's no question that it's going to become a part of our lives, and it's going to be uh, as big, or rather as common, as, like, how we had once a point of time, carpenters, blacksmiths, potters. They were in plenty. Today is there, you don't find a lot of them. Today you find a lot of engineers and a lot of doctors, but automation is going to become like that. Anik, over to you.
Sir, you may continue.
All right. So going forward in 2018, when we became $1 million company, uh, the some of the failures that we learned in 2018 were more about, did we structure ourselves correctly, right? Like, was our legal structure correct? Are our organization positions, we used to call everybody an industrial engineer. Is that really the right thing to do? We started getting a lot of scale based issues that we had not thought previously, because that was not really a requirement. And that's what we started working onto. And finally today in 2020, uh, we are we are just questioning our business model. We ran primarily as a service company. So one of the failures, if you look at it from a failure point of view, is running a service company is that, you're using human capital, so you're trading time for money. So until you work, you get paid. Once you don't have people, you're not going to get paid. And that's not really a business. That's more like, self-employment. And we realize that we are heavily basically dependent on services. And that's why we said that we need to really build a product that can help us sustain. And the business model that we are now adopting is, about sustainability. So you take any business that has been around for last many years, chances are they have a product. Okay, and that product is basically earning money. So if you take manufacturing companies, they're selling a product, and as long as there's demand for that product, excuse me, they keep getting revenue. But if you make human capital as your business, then you are purely dependent on people. And that's where in 2020 we are realigning our business model to say that, hey, what's our purpose now for the next 10 years? What are our goals? What are our objectives? And is that aligned with the efforts that we are putting and our business model? And we had never thought about our business like this in 2006 or 2014. Uh, could we have thought? Yes, 100%. So if you're, let's say, a startup who's getting a funding, and speed and growth is basically what you need, all that we are thinking as a small business in 2020, you would be thinking right as the first step when you're going and doing a startup. But if you're learning a small business, if you're running a small business, and if you're putting your own money, and if you're learning it on the go, and you're basically growing as how the demand is coming to you, how your skills are improving, and if you're growing that way, then the approach basically has to be exactly the opposite, or at least different, in order to run a business and grow a company. So I gave you the success and failure timelines, but I want to now focus on some of the behaviors and competency that allowed me to, take this risk, start the business. So to every student who's basically working and studying right now, and if you're thinking of starting a business, look at building some of the skills that you need in order to be an entrepreneur. So when I was in college, in my school days, I learned classical music, and that allowed me to be a part of my school band, my college band, as well as uh, I come from the Gujarati community where Garba is very famous, and not many people sing Garba today. So I was always invited, and we had a band. We still do have a band for a Garba. But that whole experience taught me about teamwork. How to be with people who are as creative as you. It taught me to push my creativity levels. It taught me money management, negotiation skills when we took orders, for, like, we as a band used to go and perform, and there was a prize money, and how it is going to be distributed among all the bandmates. How do you basically negotiate when somebody is calling you for the marriage function, or so all those skills we learned while being a part of the band. But the biggest lesson that I got was handling disagreements. People always don't agree, and creativity is very subjective. So how do you handle those disagreements? Those are some of the skills that I learned during my experience in the band. I was part of the college cultural team, so we organized fest for 3-4 years. I was in engineering. I started as a volunteer, and then grew up the ranks as we went by the years. But I mean, this I may be preaching on this subject to all you guys, because you guys arrange massive and fantastic fests all across. Like, this is something that I've seen in all our engineering college all across. They do very well. So sponsorship, sales, going, you learn sales skills, managing teams, students, audiences, teachers, principals. You are learning a lot about people, working within a budget, jugaad or frugal thinking. Trust me, I learned all this basically in my volunteer experience as part of the college. And I also learned about product design. How do you basically put a product, an event together, and how do you design it, how do you make it appealing to people so that you have more audience. And finally, my background during my engineering days, I had the opportunity to work part-time or like an apprenticeship. And I worked as a music teacher, and that allowed me basically to learn skills like preparation and personal productivity, managing chaos. Like, I used to teach a bunch of I think 5 to 8 year old kids, and you can imagine, right? 25 people sitting in a class, and you need to manage them, and you are only 18 or 20 years old as a music teacher. So that really taught me a lot about managing chaos. Time management, I was studying in engineering, but I was working part-time, plus I was doing some music. So how do you, every all of us have 24 hours. And by personality, I have laziness traits. I like to procrastinate. I've improved a lot, not according to my wife, but so to speak, I'll take some credit. But making your weaknesses your advantage. So I had a lot of opportunities where my weakness or being lazy, you could turn it into your advantage. And it's just looking at the weakness basically in a different way. So because I got to know that I'm a little lazy, I started thinking to myself that, hey, how do I find new ways to make this work done very fast, very quickly? And I found new ways. And when people used to take 4 hours, I could do it basically in 1.5 hours, sometimes even lesser, etc. So these were some of the bread oriented skills that I learned, which put a good foundation that when I was starting the company at 22, no experience at all, these skills I could relate to a lot of situations in business, to what had happened in my band or in my cultural fest, or when I was working as a part-time music teacher, and try and basically take some decisions based on those skills I had. Uh, I have a few role models, and my parents are my first role models. They taught me basically life-oriented education. So love, sacrifice, gratitude, and countless other things. But gratitude is something which stands on top, that really helped me as I started the business and grew the business, because business is all about people. My music teacher, she basically when we used to have a music class, we it was not only about learning classical music, but also it was about learning lessons of life. And I've been very inspired by a philosopher and guru known as Pandurang Shastri Athavale, well known as Dadaji. And through his teaching, I learned about myself right from a young age, about our culture, about our self introspections. These all life oriented education skills helped me basically as a foundation, that if I were to go and start a company, it gave me that push. Not one thing is what only worked, but all this together is what really helped me throughout this last 15 years of my SNIC solutions journey. So in summary, if I were to tell all of you what are some of the competencies that you need to adopt right now as you're studying, to get on the road of entrepreneurship, the one thing is courage and risk taking ability. Entrepreneurship is the less road traveled. So without this, becoming an entrepreneur is hard. You're going to find the journey basically very difficult. The second thing that I learned is persistence. If you get a challenge, I see most people easily quit today. I see also a lot of startups, like, did the startup for 6 months, 1 year, etc. It didn't work out. As long as you have given your best, like 100%, and then you quit, it's not working. Maybe it was a bad idea. It's okay. But ask yourself and be persistent. If you've not given your best, and go and continue. Don't really quit. And this is the quality we find lacking in a lot of individuals who are looking to start a business. The biggest two, and this is becoming a rarer commodity as we go forward, is accountability and dependability. When we have a lot of, we take a lot of interviews in SNIC solutions, and we test them on, are they accountable and dependable people, even people who work like for a year, 2 years, 3 years. We The biggest lacuna that we find, and this is a lot particular to our country in India, is that when things go south, even the simplest tasks are given actually to people who have demonstrated accountability. I remember in my college or during my music events, etc., when things went wrong, there were only very few people where our teachers, etc., would trust on that. Hey, Nikhil, go and do this, go and do that. And I always wondered why. They were called the favorite child or the chamcha of the teacher.
Hello, sir. Hello.
Yeah, go ahead.
We are just running short of time, sir.
Sure. This is
Just
my last slide.
sure, sir. Okay, sir.
Right. And finally, to end with, is intent and integrity. Business is not done with ideas, but it's about people. So whatever you're doing, do it with the right intentions, and have integrity. Make sure that you're not trying to cheat anybody, and communicate basically your intent as far as possible. And the traits 3 and 4 really will help you to get on the road, to continue on the road of entrepreneurship. The first two traits are more about having those two criteria or competencies to just get started on the road of entrepreneurship. So with this, if there are any more questions, I'm happy to answer them. But otherwise, Team EDC at NIT, Sucharita, who reached me, and Anik, thank you all so much for having me here, and giving me
Thank
the
you, sir.
opportunity to share my experience.
Thank you, sir, for your presence. We, in behalf of Team EDC, are grateful for your present. You gave us so much precious time of yours. Thank you, sir.
Perfect.
Thank you.
Thanks. All right.
Hope to meet you again, sir.
Sure. Thank you, Anik. Thanks, everybody. Have a good day.